So at Ivanhoe Mines, we have 3 world-class resources in each of their commodities. That's copper, platinum group metals, and zinc. And for each of those resources, we're blessed with very high grades, much higher grades than you typically find elsewhere in the mining industry. This means that for every unit of copper that we produce, it requires 10 times less energy in terms of digging and transporting rock to a processing facility, and also in terms of crushing and beneficiating that rock into a usable copper product. We have a natural advantage because we are a brand new mining company. And when I say we're a brand new mining company, we've actually spent 20 years in getting to this point in terms of exploration and discovery to find these incredible resources that we have today. We are right at the point of moving these resources in the ground into commercial mining operations, and we have an advantage that we can look at things completely differently to everybody else in the industry. So when it comes to building a mine of the future, a mine with a lower environmental footprint that has lasting benefits for all of its communities, we can design for that from day one. We are producing the metals that the world critically needs to enable a greener future. So copper is the most obvious in terms of its role in electrification, but it also applies to platinum group metals, and it also applies to zinc. I think it's safe to say that these metals are all in critically short supply if we want to get anywhere close to our aims, our collective aims as a planet in terms of climate change. We also look at how we produce these metals and the things that we can influence. So we look to produce these metals in a way that is as environmentally conscious as possible, and in a way that benefits the host communities where we operate, and in a way that doesn't contribute to the problem of generating more CO2 emissions.
So Ivanhoe Mines has a strategic partnership with SNEL to secure its energy needs for its projects in the DRC. So SNEL is the Société Nationale d'Électricité, the DRC state-owned utility. Up until 2014, SNEL had essentially a monopoly in terms of generation, transmission and distribution. But then the sector was liberalized, and since then the landscape has changed, and there are some IPPs that have come on the scene. Even though the liberalization has been fairly timid, so it was an obvious choice for Ivanhoe Mines to reach out to in terms of securing a partnership and securing its energy needs. So in 2014, an agreement was signed between Ivanhoe Mines Energy and SNEL for the rehabilitation and modernization of 3 power stations that were part of SNEL's portfolio. The first one being Mwadingusha, and then the 2 other ones being Koni and Nzilo. Mwadingusha since then has been rehabilitated, modernized, and is providing 78 megawatts to the national grid. So last year, when an amendment to the 2014 agreement was signed, with basically the effect of swapping out Koni and Nzilo out of the agreement and replacing it by the rehabilitation and modernization of a turbine at Inga 2. So the approach Ivanhoe Mines has taken to secure power for its Kipushi and Kamoa projects is the partnership with SNEL. And that partnership has taken the form of a financing agreement where Ivanhoe Mines Energy, which is part of the Ivanhoe Mines Group, provides financing to SNEL for the rehabilitation and modernization of power stations that were part or that are still part also of SNEL's portfolio. So these power stations typically have been built somewhere mid of the last century and are producing a lot less than what their installed capacity is, and sometimes had come to a complete stop. So it made sense, instead of looking at building additional power stations, to initially look at power stations that were in the portfolio but that were not providing enough power to the grid. There are obviously checks and balances in place to make sure that the funds are used in the right way, so that the management of the rehabilitation project is also done jointly by SNEL and Ivanhoe Mines, where a third-party EPCM is brought on board together with contractors to carry out the works for the rehabilitation of those power stations. And then in terms of reimbursement of the financing that is provided, so there's a 40% of the invoices payable by Kiko and Kamoa to SNEL that is used for the reimbursement of the loan. 10% of those invoices are ring-fenced for maintenance, because obviously maintenance is very important. The reason why those power stations were no longer producing in accordance with their installed capacity is mostly due to lack of maintenance or insufficient maintenance. So the 10% ring-fenced amount is very important. And then obviously the remaining 50% is being paid to SNEL, which is the supplier of the electricity for the projects. Well, hydropower has two big advantages. One, it is stable, so it's suitable for baseload, and it is green. And mining operations are very power intensive. So the DRC is estimated to have about 100,000 megawatts in terms of hydro electricity potential. But today only about 2,500 megawatt has been installed, and even worse, only half of that is operational. It's going to sound as a huge cliche, but the key factor for the success of the partnership between SNEL and Ivanhoe Mines is the fact that it is really a win-win partnership. So you need to make it work with those two different cultures, and you need to make it work in the interest of both parties, because obviously these type of projects come with their obstacles, and you need to find ways to surmount those obstacles in a way that is suitable and acceptable. Well, the plans to construct a smelter, a direct-to-blister smelter, are well underway, and it will be the biggest of its kind on the African continent. And the intention now is to finalize that construction and to basically commission by Q4 of 2024. But obviously for that to be possible, power will be crucial, and that's why a very important milestone was reached last year, July of last year, 2021, when we amended the agreement, the existing agreement with SNEL, and where we were able to bring in the financing of the rehabilitation and modernization of a turbine at Inga 2. We will be able to bring 162 megawatts into the grid, and that would then basically constitute a total of about 240 megawatts added to the grid, one in Gusha and Inga 2 combined. So it's really those two are completely interlinked, because a smelter cannot happen without Inga 2. So we've had really a lot of support from the authorities and from the DRC president himself, obviously because Kamoa-Kakula, because of its size, is a very important project for the country as a whole, for its economy. But also, when we will reach that 240 megawatt combined, we should have added a bit more to the grid than what we actually need ourselves for operations. And so the excess will basically be fed into the grid for the benefit of the country as a whole and for its population.
I think at Kamoa-Kakula we have a huge natural advantage in that we are blessed with enormous hydropower potential in the DRC. So today at Kamoa-Kakula, 100% of the energy that we consume on the mine comes from renewable hydropower, and that is hydropower that's been facilitated by investments that Ivanhoe Mines have made over the past 5 years in terms of improving those generation facilities and grid distribution networks. And so we have to look at what is the next biggest source of carbon emissions, and that would be the underground diesel mining fleet. And so we're very aggressively looking at a strategy to start replacing that diesel underground mining fleet with battery electric alternatives. And I think it's been incredible to see the pace of change in that technology and the availability of battery electric mining fleet. I think at Platreef, it's going to be a longer journey in terms of the pathway towards net zero than what we have at Kamoa-Kakula in the DRC, and that's quite simply because we don't have the natural hydropower advantage that we have in the DRC. In South Africa today, we are reliant on grid power that is predominantly coal-fired. So one of our key targets is that over time we want to transition away from that grid power, and being in Limpopo province, in an extremely sunny part of the world, solar power is the obvious avenue to go down, and there is huge solar potential to power all of our operations in future. One of the key things that we need to work on is how we can turn that solar operation into a 24-hour operation, so it's not just when the sun shines, and that involves also investing in grid-scale battery technologies so that Platreef can be solar powered through the night as well as through the day. From day one at Platreef, we will be using battery electric underground equipment instead of diesel-powered underground equipment. So that's much cleaner, emissions-free technology. And in order to charge the batteries on this new battery electric fleet, we will be installing a smaller scale solar farm on surface, so that from day one, at least from an underground point of view, we are operating on a net zero basis. And then in the longer term, we will look to transition away from traditional grid power into our own renewable electricity generation at Black Reef.
The introduction of power at the Kamoa-Kakula project has enabled us to establish 2 local businesses just adjacent to the mine. These businesses are a sewing facility, which provides all the mine's personal protective equipment, and a brick-making facility, which provides all the bricks necessary for the mine construction and development, as well as the construction of the mine's camp and facilities. The businesses are booming at such a rate that it's almost impossible for them to keep up with the requirements of the mine, and this provides for greater opportunities for expansion in future. In 2012, Kamoa established a Sustainable Livelihoods Initiatives, whereby local farmers are trained and equipped in the skill of farming and set up with farming initiatives nearby their homes. These lead farmers then train other community members with a view to expanding farming operations throughout the communities. Through the introduction of electricity, the farming operations have been significantly upscaled. For example, drip irrigation made possible at the banana plantation, where a group of women are the sole owners of the plantation, have enabled this project to be greatly expanded. The Fish Pond Initiative, which commenced with a pilot project of just 5 ponds, has now been expanded so that there are over 100 fish ponds in the area. The fish ponds are constructed and equipped for local community members from host communities around the mine and contain tilapia and catfish, which are sold to the mine and areas around the mine. Through this initiative, a number of community members now have access to protein as a source of their diet, as well as to income, thereby enhancing their livelihoods. Electricity has helped by making better pumping possible for these fish ponds, and the introduction of electricity has enabled Kamoa to greatly expand this project and increase its range. The DRC is an area that's not only blessed with mineral resources, but also has an abundance of sunlight and water. This makes it fairly easy for Kamoa to tap into these opportunities for the benefit of host communities. The initiatives that we implement in host communities are equipped with solar power to make them sustainable and affordable for those communities. For example, the schools have access to solar power, and the local chicken farming initiative also has solar power, which provides them with refrigeration for their products. Kamoa is now investigating the use of hydropower for upscaling our livelihood initiatives to provide greater pumping, as well as to reticulate the Kaponda community nearby the mine. Ivanhoe regards access to water as imperative to life and dignity. We have therefore installed solar power water wells in host communities around our projects. These water wells provide potable water to host communities in those areas, meaning that they don't have to walk for miles to fetch water from other water sources. The COVID-19 pandemic also highlighted the importance of access to water for hygiene and sanitation. Ivanhoe therefore fast-tracked the installation of these solar-powered water wells in host communities and also established hand-washing facilities in host communities near our mines.